Hello, everyone. I often use the word intentional. And can a career be intentional? I often get this question that can we use or use the word or a plan to have an intentional career? And for the last 3, 4 years, while I've been trying to coach mid-career people or speak to a lot of mid-career people, this word keeps coming back all the time in almost every conversation. How can we be intentional about our career? The logic being, or the background being, that everybody wants to have a career plan. But what nobody realizes, or most people don't realize, is that the plan never comes through to the dot. There will always be something that will go wrong. There will always be accidents. There will always be some mishaps. There will be better opportunities during your plan. And many people don't realize that while they fully embrace and welcome the better opportunities that come to them, they they don't, or they are surprised when the opportunities dry up, or for a long period they are stagnated in a mid career. And the best way to learn about all these things is to learn from somebody who has overcome all this, gone ahead and has been in leadership positions, so that from a vantage point they can share what can work for them. And we will do exactly that today. If you don't know me, my name is Anshuman Tiwari, and this is your show, Manage Better, where we bring consultants, authors, coaches, trainers, people who've done a lot better than we have, and try and learn from them and take their life lessons into our being. Over the last 98 episodes, yes, today is 99th episode, we have brought authors from across the world, from India, leading practitioners, management consultants, trainers, coaches, physical and health instructors, and many such professionals. And in that process, we've covered 8 episodes. Of course, like I've always shared, not all have been live, and but I think except 2 or 3, maybe everybody, all episodes have been live with your love. And a series which started with 10 episodes, or a plan for 10 episodes, is now 99. But more about that later. Let me quickly introduce my guest for today. I'll bring him into the show in a minute, but it's always easier to introduce a guest when he or she is not on the live stream for both of us. So today's guest is Sameer Chadha. And Sameer, many of you would know, who are in the, you can say, Big Four consulting space. He's a partner and chief executive officer of KPMG Global Services. And beyond that, he's known in the industry as somebody who a lot of young aspirants and mid-career people look up to as a role model career. When I announced that, Sameer will be my guest on the 99 show, 3 people from my earlier organization, HSBC, messaged me that we worked with Sameer at Barclays, fantastic person. Please pass on our record. So I'll do that later for Sameer, but that is a more worthy introduction than all the bullet points that we can usually see on anybody's career. I would love if at the end of my career, or towards, in a few years' time, people can say that about me. And people already say that about Sameer. Sameer is a chartered accountant and graduate of the Sri Ram College of Commerce, which is the college for commerce in India, and has worked in leadership positions across Lehman Brothers, Barclays, and currently, of course, with KPMG Global Services, where he is the CEO. He lives out of Gurgaon and has had over a 30-year career, which, and Samir and I have known each other for a while, mostly online these days because of LinkedIn. And I'm glad that he said yes to come and share his life journey. So with that, let me bring him to the stage. Namaste, Samirji. All good, I hope, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anshuman. I really enjoyed your opening remarks. Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure. And, quite a lot of people, like I said during the introduction, I worked for HSBC for some time. And obviously, within that banking ecosystem, there are people who have worked for multiple companies. And they did mention that fantastic people's person. So that is the reputation and image you carry. And it's a very good one to have, because at the end of the career, or as a leader, what else do you want to see? You want to see outcomes, and you want to see people grow. So glad
True.
that is happening to you. So a little bit about the format, Samir. You were in general familiar, but this is a conversational show, and we do welcome questions from the audience. So during the show, maybe around at halfway mark or so, I will invite questions or select questions. But till then, I have some broad, high-level questions for you, which basically work on your career and how you share your lessons with others. So that's the general pattern.
Sure.
And I will just do a quick logistic check to see whether we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Yeah, we are. So that is always a check because after 5 minutes, and there was one such show, after 5 minutes, we realized that we were not live on LinkedIn at all. And that particular show, Sameer, was how to leverage LinkedIn to for personal branding, and LinkedIn didn't work that day. So
That's
I will
nice.
never forget that one. But
That's nice.
quickly coming to this, uh, the first question, of course, long career, many more years to go, but and highly decorated one as well. And since the topic of today's conversation is leadership insights for an intentional career, I wanted to start with something that is close to you. What were the few intentional decisions in your career that propelled your career? So obviously everybody makes plans, but there are some intentional decisions that we take at some points in our career. Maybe someone takes it early in their career, someone takes it mid, and someone takes it later. But what were those few intentional decisions that made your career what it is today, uh, a highly decorated one? Any top of the mind?
Yeah. So, Anshuman, so thanks. First of all, I think thank you for that introduction. And, I said it to you, but I'll say it live as well that I'm simply in awe of the fact that you can do and take out so much time for, giving back like you do when you're holding down a full time job, right? I mean, I think you're omnipresent on LinkedIn. I mean, we know each other basically through LinkedIn. I keep seeing your posts, and as I said, to hold down a full time job while doing this, right, is really fantastic. So, a big shout out to you. In terms of an intentional career, so I would say this that I started my career. So I'm a chartered accountant, as you said, and I started off my career as with Nestle. I used to audit
Mhm.
them. After I qualified, they gave me a job. I then moved on to Bank of America. From Bank of America, I moved into a third-party outsourcing company called ICICI OneSource, from where I moved to Lehman Brothers, from Lehman Brothers to Barclays, and from Barclays, where I am right now. So I've done about 6 jobs, right? And I think the intentionality part of that has been as such that I have not hesitated to take what seemed to be, you know, roles which were not in a linear progression, right? So I was in an FMCG organization. I then moved into a retail bank, right? Bank of America's retail bank at that point was, growing, right? Then I moved from a banking space to the offshore space where I have been since then. This was about 2002. Again, it was a organization that ICICI had, had basically started. I joined. It was again in a quasi startup kind of a mode. From there, then I moved into Lehman Brothers, which was an investment bank, and I'm a consumer banker, so I have a lot of banking experience, but largely consumer and commercial bank. Moved to Lehman, then back into Barclays, where of course it's that was something I'd done a lot before, and then I moved into a Big Four. I'm an accountant, but I've never been in a Big Four. So I think I have, if the role has sounded interesting to me, and I have then trusted
Hmm.
my instincts and said I'm going to go with it, right? So I've not tried to over rationalize in my head about should I not. Of course we all have to take the right decisions and do whatever decisioning method that we have, but I have chosen to go into things which were not necessarily traditional. As I've told you, my the companies I've joined, right, have not necessarily been in one straight path. It's not been all FMCG or all banks and stuff like that. So that's one. And I think you said something really interesting in the beginning, right? You talked about intentionality in building careers, and of course we must be intentional in building careers, but I do feel that luck plays a really important role in how careers shape up, right? And I think,
Yeah.
luck is defined by me at least as being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, somebody actually knowing you and, tapping you on the shoulder. A lot of roles actually don't get advertised, right? You often get calls from people who and they ask you whether, you'd like to join, etc. So I think, you may be, right? You and I are at a certain position in our life. And the point is, there are many people who are better than us, right, and who may not be in those positions in life, right? And I've often wondered, why does that happen? And I think, to me, the answer to that is that there is competence is the base level thing. You have to be good at your job, but at times you have to be in the right place at the right time, and luck plays a role. It definitely has played a role in my career. So that's the one thing I would like to just call out, given that you mentioned that in your opening comments.
No, fair point. I mean, I think the one thing I picked in the last few minutes, as you shared, is that the intentionality is about, in your career at least, has been that being very willing to take that leap of faith whenever the opportunity arose. And I think at least in my career, at least twice this has happened when I was offered a role where I actually stopped and thought, are they really talking to me? Because then I realized that, the risk is there. They have made the choice. I don't have any risk in this. I mean, I have confidence, of course, that, and surely you would have had that confidence. So there is this one lesson that I also, whenever coaches come to me, and I'm sure you have coached a lot of people in your career, you would also share that, like you said, don't overthink. Think, but don't overthink. And if somebody else is finding you capable, why are we questioning their wisdom? So that's also one area to look at. Very quickly, we have some regulars on the show, so I'll just shout out. Thank you, Ramesh Sood, and we have a guest from Brazil today. Thank you, Camila, and quite a few. And during the show, we will bring in a little more. Uh,
Sure.
to the 100 plus people, 120 odd people who have already joined on LinkedIn and some on YouTube. I can't see the YouTube number. Uh, you can actually ask your questions now. The way to ask questions, if you are new to the format, just put in the question wherever you are putting in comments. We will see it, and in some time, Sameer will take those questions. Okay, so that's one lesson learning from your career, and how uh, being intentional yet not overthinking helped you. The logical next step would be, careers are mostly unplanned, but we do need a plan. Everybody needs some kind of plan, knowing fully well that it may not come true, or something else may come true, which may be even better. And a lot of people, when I am speaking to, they don't have any plan at all, and then they leave everything to chance. And of course, there is then there's scope for blaming somebody else that they do. But in your experience, and you've been in leadership roles for quite some time. So in your experience, how do you see, how can one go about planning for a successful career? Assuming somebody is in mid career and has 20, 30 more years to go, what do you think will be the components of somebody's career plan at that stage?
Again, see, the first two roles I've done have been, domestic market facing. So both Nestle and
Hmm.
Bank of America were domestic market facing, and then I've moved into the offshore space. So one thing I have come to realize is that I enjoy being in this offshore space. Right, it's a lot to do with
Hmm.
process. It's a lot to do with scale of operations. It's a lot to do with bringing improvement, innovation. It's a lot to do with managing people at scale, etc. Those are things which I think play to my strengths, and as a consequence, I kind of enjoy doing them. I think by now, if the audience is largely mid career professionals, right, you know what it is that you enjoy doing and what it is that you don't enjoy doing, right, generally speaking.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
then you have to just be intentional in progressing down a specific path, right? So if, for example, you're an HR professional, you have to ask yourself at the mid stage in your career, that do you view yourself as being the CHRO of an organization effectively, or do you view yourself as being, as an example, the chief operating officer of an organization, right? And then you have to kind of take choices that help you get there. So for example, if you're an HR professional and you're an HR
Hmm.
business partner, then look to rounding it off by becoming or taking a stint in talent acquisition, look to getting a stint in learning and development, so that you get more rounded and then you progress down that path. So intentionality, I think, is ultimately about knowing what it is that you want, right? And for that,
Hmm.
I think initial roles are important because they help you understand that, do you like this, do you not like this, do you actually not, do you even like the corporate world and the the structure that it is, or would you rather be your own master and entrepreneurship is more your deal and that's what you would like to go down, etc. So for example, I worked now whatever number of years, right, 30 plus years, and I'm very clearly a core, you know for me corporates is it. I don't know, more power to entrepreneurs, and I always admire them for doing what they're doing. It's not who I am. It's to do also with the way that my parents were both doctors. I've never had an entrepreneur in the family. I've never seen them for entrepreneurs, and therefore corporates is the route that I have chosen. But there could be people, right? I see that in the younger generation, that they want to be their own bosses, they want to do their own thing, they want to give back to society and so on and so forth. So if that is what it is that gets you going, then that is what you should do, and frankly a lot of people are doing right now, at least in this country.
Yeah. No, so as you were speaking, I was noting down. I think the one lesson I quickly noted down is that, of course, this trying to figure out what we like, because eventually we will last long in a career only if we like that space.
Yeah.
It's very foolish of us to believe that we can't like it and yet we will endure, and um, because eventually a career is a marathon. You can't really endure it if you don't like it. I had a 10K run this morning, so I'm using that example, that if you don't enjoy the run, if you don't enjoy being on the road, if you don't enjoy the sound of your shoes on the road, you will possibly endure for 2 kilometers, maybe 5. You can't endure it for 10, 20, 40, 50, 100 kilometers. So I will use that metaphor in how you explained. And I'm glad you brought in this, love for corporate, because a lot of talk these days, particularly on the online social media, is around everybody wants to do quit 9 to 5 and start their own thing without realizing that what do they want to do. Even there they will have to find something that they love to do. It's not that it's only at work. There also they will have to do.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point, right? Because see, ultimately you have to enjoy what you're doing. Right now, a lot of us work because of the fact that, frankly, we need that paycheck. We need our lifestyle has to be funded by a certain inflow, and therefore, I'm not knocking the fact that everybody can do jobs that they love and that they enjoy, because ultimately you're also doing it with a certain purpose in mind, right? But again, I would say that if and you're absolutely right. Like, you are running, and more power to you. I actually kind of walk, and I walk an hour every day because I thoroughly enjoy doing it. So when I don't do
Yeah.
it, I start feeling that I'm missing something, right? And if you take that same metaphor out into work, right? I mean, unless you really enjoy what you do, you can't really be passionate about it, right? You will just be
Yeah.
clocking in the hours, and that'll be that, right? And I would urge that not everybody can, unfortunately, do jobs that they really truly enjoy, right? Sometimes you just end up being in a job which you're doing because it gives you a certain paycheck. But do try and keep looking for. You'll know it when you're in it. You'll know this is it. This is me. This plays to my strengths, and this is the place that I really want to be.
Yeah. I'm just looking at some questions. Some questions have started coming in. So Gopal, who runs network of consulting professionals, leave the worry about thinking. Yeah. So not so much a question. There are a couple of questions. I will bring them in as we go along, and maybe one we can take now, Sameer. So Sonu Goswami has asked a question about what leadership qualities do you believe are most important for career advancement? Assuming, of course, this is a mid-career show. Once somebody is in mid-career, what are the qualities that you believe are most important for career advancement? How can individuals cultivate them? It's a slightly motherhood question, but if you can narrow it down into mid-career and mid-career to senior career, how would you like to see people growing there?
Yeah, no, so I think so. Sonu, thanks for that. I think I'll break this into two parts. I'll talk a bit of I'll talk some element of the software element, but essentially, I think one has to have a very strong bias for execution, right? Strategy is very important. Ultimately, you have to execute against something, right? So I think be absolutely clear about that. That execution bias is very important in jobs, right? The other thing is that, well, whatever you're doing, you have to get stuck into it and you have to understand it in detail, right? KPMG has this saying, be a student of the firm. It basically means you should keep learning, right? And when I joined, I was, for example, from a banking environment. I didn't know the Big Four environment well at the point I joined. I just got stuck into it, spent a lot of time with a lot of people doing reviews, trying to understand what it is. And today, obviously at the stage I am, I'm fully comfortable with what the organization does. So you have to really be on top of what your businesses, and you have to have a strong bias for action. The other thing I will say is this, that on the non technical side, right, that do not be, if you're on the assumption that mid-career professionals are generally, say, leading teams, right, that lead with your heart as much as you're leading with your head, right? Which means don't just be thinking about the intellectual side of your job, right? Think about the emotional side of your job. And I have lived with this credo my entire career, right? Which is that ultimately you're dealing with people. People react to emotion, right? And therefore, it is important that you engage with them as individuals, right? And therefore, there is sometimes this belief that when you get into a job or a corporate environment, right, that you have to somehow leave that part of you behind and only the intellect part can come through, right? And I kind of don't believe that. I think you should get your whole self, which means that you have to be able to engage with people. People react to emotions. Human being react to emotions. It's a very simple thing. You see an ad and it touches you. You see a movie which touches you. It's touching the emotional side of you, right? And therefore, it is important in careers that please, deal with the people in your team as individuals. All of them are different. All of them have unique elements to them. You have to deal with them one on one and not be afraid of letting emotion come into the workplace. Even when you have to deliver hard messages. I've delivered a lot of hard messages in my career. They can be delivered respectfully. And if you have a good equation with the individual dealing with, they're more than not likely to take it in the right spirit and try and absorb what you're saying. So that's one thing I would leave, that the technical elements of the role are the technical elements, right? What I spoke about. But this element is really important. And the more you progress in life, it's all about dealing with people and ultimately getting people to engage, see a certain view, figure out how to get the organization moving in a certain direction, etc. That is far, far easier if you engage with individuals as humans and respect the fact that they have feelings and they have to be engaged with. You're on mute, Anshuman.
I am told, Samir, I sound wonderful on mute. So I,
That,
I, I,
that's a good one.
I try that
That's a good one.
from some time to time, but
Hilarious.
this has become online life now. We often talk on mute. But as you were talking, I could relate that, and since this is 99th episode, we have had quite a few guests of, similar stalwart nature, corporate success, or coaches or authors who've achieved something in life. And I noticed that this is probably a trend. Uh, Trend in a good way. I mean, I'm not the Instagrammy trend these days that everything is a trend, but I'm a quality professional, so I use data points. I was trying to search my mind. Okay, a lot of people who are in a similar position in their careers, life, and have influenced, and people talk about them in a similar way, actually put heart before head. And when you said heart before, I mean, not necessarily always before the head. That's what was clicking to me, that this is probably a secret recipe, that it may not be so much secret, but focus on people's emotion when you work with people. And the other way I look at it, I also manage team, or teams of teams, in the sense that there are people in my team who manage teams as well. And I always think that, what kind of a role model can I be so that they manage their teams better. Eventually, the hundreds and thousands of people that report into us, directly or indirectly, do deserve that respect. So I'm glad you brought in that emotion and people and the that engagement part. Uh, there is one more question. So there is one question, Abhishek Anand. If you're listening, your question is in 4 or 5 parts. It's a little too detailed, Abhishek, for this format. So I will skip that for now, unless you can summarize it and post it in during the show later. So I'll skip that question, but I will take Matthew's question. Matthew Varghese is asking a question, uh, and he's specifying he's joining from Dubai. So thank you for joining so early. The question for Sameer: how do you maintain that same degree of passion or desire to deliver in this ever-evolving and changing dynamics of the market and workplace? This was something I wanted to ask as well. That obviously a lot keeps changing, technology keeps changing, ways of working keep changing. Last 2 3 years back, the COVID thing made a lot of impact. But how do you maintain the same degree of passion or desire to deliver? And question, of course, is to you, but it is also what can be the lesson that we can derive from your career.
Yeah. So, Matthew, thanks. And again, I reiterate what Anshuman's saying. Thank you for joining in from Dubai early. Um, the answer to this, frankly, is that at least the jobs I've done, truly, I really enjoy the jobs, right? So I guess that passion or desire to deliver is because I thoroughly enjoy what I do. And if somebody was to ask me, what is it that what is the legacy you want to leave in any organization, right? And so I'm the CEO of KPMG Global Services. Prior to this, I was the CEO of Barclays. And I've always felt that I want to make a difference, right? It's as simple as that. When I leave a role, an organization, I want people to say that this individual made a difference to this organization, to us, in this interaction with us, right? And that's true in my personal space as well, but for sure in the corporate space, I want to make a difference. I want to make people feel that whatever role I've done, I've left it better. So that's one. The other thing I will say is that in the current environment we are in, right? Change unfortunately has now got embedded at hyperspeed into what we are doing. In fact, yesterday I just googled out of curiosity that when was ChatGPT launched, right? It was November 2022, right? So that's it, November 2022. It's like 18 months ago, and now Gen AI is what everybody speaks about, and therefore I feel that the generation which is now coming through, right, has to now just get comfortable with ambiguity. And as human beings, we don't generally like change, right? We kind of, we are generally change resistant. But the point is that there is no option. So I am very zen in my mind about change, right? It's something which I take for granted. It's something which I think will keep happening, and therefore you just have to keep evolving with it. It's not easy. It's an acquired skill. It's a learned skill. You just have to feel that there is no longer that whole period of where you can be stable for maybe like my parents' generations, for decades at end in their jobs, and we don't have that luxury, frankly, in the current day and age. So that's what I would say. You have to really be enjoying what you do, and you really have to have the view of saying I want to make things better, right? And then you have to be comfortable with ambiguity.
And just a little bit, if I can add, Sameer, I'm glad you used the word acquired skill, because in several conversations, what pops up is that, and you mentioned our parents' generation. So many of our parents' generation might have started one job and finished in the same job, maybe the same building as well, and in some cases the same desk as well. Not for want of desire, but maybe for want of choice. Now the situation is that in the same career, which at least lasts about 40 years, we might be working 5 different careers, 3 to 5 different careers. Many of us. I'm not doing what I started out doing. I'm sure you already shared your example. You are not doing what you started or trained as doing. But and that's the truth is that, and Matthew, your question, maybe pushed me for this thought that this is now the reality. This is no longer the new normal, or this is no longer anything to be talked about. This is it. If it generation there are 5 careers or even 10 careers in a long career span, that will be news. 3 4 changes during the, and I'm not talking about job changes, I'm talking about real career shifts. You're doing really
Okay.
different things. So that's actually really an acquired skill. The faster you acquire, the better. Since we are taking questions, let me take one more. Some of the questions are better than the questions I prepared, so why not? The audience is smarter than I am. So, let's take Tarun Kohli's. Tarun is a consultant, organizational consultant, and we went to the same college. He stayed in touch. So his question is more about, do you agree that in the end, how you interact with others, including your team members, play an important role in defining the quality of your career as well? Very profound one. Anything to add on this?
Yeah, no. So, Tarun, thanks, and I think absolutely it does. Again, the point is, I have a sense of real camaraderie with in my leadership team, and a number of other people in my current job. That has been true in my previous roles as well. I have been in. I'm in touch with people from organizations where I worked maybe 10, 15 years ago, right? I stay in touch with them. They let me know when life events happen to them, and I absolutely think that if you try to drive a organizational culture which is vibrant and which is based on the individual and is people centric, right, it's very fulfilling for you. For sure, it's very fulfilling for me, right? I look forward also to going to work because I enjoy the people I work with, right? We don't just talk about work. We have we've kind of morphed into the social side, right? So I know their families, I know their children, they know my family, they know my children. So I think all of this ultimately, as I said, organizations are made up of human beings, and human beings are social creatures, and human beings need to be engaged within a certain way, and that always, it's like, when you do something in giving back to society, you feel good about actually doing that. The recipient hopefully feels good as well, but you also feel good that you're being able to do something to actually give back. So, linked in a certain way, I absolutely think you raise actually a really interesting point, right? That while the recipient may feel great, I know for sure I feel really great by creating that environment or being able to engage with people at that level.
Absolutely. And I'm sure all of us see that, anybody who works with people sees that option that when you interact with people, your energy levels, your enthusiasm, and general positive vibes go up. Of course, life will, and you mentioned this, Samir, earlier, that there will be occasions where, particularly in leadership positions, you will have to deliver some harsh, tough messages, which will be difficult. And it is never easy for either party. It's not that it's easy for us, and I've been in that position for some years, where you have to deliver a very, very harsh message. And many people think that we are thick-skinned people and it's easy for us. It's never easy, but one does it. But apart from that, and if you do that with respect and dignity maintained for the person who's involved, people do understand. Maybe not immediately, but over a period of time, they do understand.
No, no,
Oh,
and spot on, Anshuman. I think that's important, right? I think just I want to clarify one thing, because sometimes people say, well, if you drive too collegiate an environment, then you can't drive hard messages. I don't
hmm,
agree with that at all. In fact, right? The point you're making is, I personally feel it becomes easier, right? Because if
hmm,
people feel you're invested in them, right, and people feel that this person actually cares for us, right, they're more receptive to hearing developmental feedback as well, right? Because and developmental feedback, Anshuman said it well, right, has to be delivered with respect. The idea is
correct.
you have to be able to isolate what you're trying to address from that individual. And when somebody walks out of your room after a difficult conversation, right, as far as possible, they shouldn't be feeling totally demoralized and totally, slump shouldered, right? Nobody can feel
Hmm,
great after a developmental conversation beyond a point in time, right? But I feel at least you should be able to walk out with saying, what, if I reflect upon this person is actually invested in making me better, right? And
correct.
there I think is where a collegiate environment and a environment where you respect the individual helps a lot, actually.
No, totally. And I think many people would think I'm fairly senior. I am, but only a couple of weeks ago, my manager had a development conversation with me, and I came out thinking that, oh, okay, so this is point I have ignored. Let me look at. Of course, it feels a little ouch for 10 minutes, but after that it works out. Great. Moving on, in the spirit that Samir is attracting some wonderful questions, so let's unilaterally blame Sameer Chadha for getting good questions. Uh, Ramesh Sood is back with a question. Uh, so, a little background: Ramesh is more a consultant for some years and operates independently.
No,
So,
I see him on LinkedIn regularly. So
Okay. So, just thought maybe some context helps. So, have you in your career, while climbing up the ladder, also experienced a more powerful anti-you appearing when you seem to be having a super flow in your career without ever knowing the reason? And how did you manage that? Little profound, but anything you want to add to this, Samir?
so Ramesh, thanks. So my sense on this is that see, whenever I'm in a role, and like I said, I've done about whatever 6 jobs till now, right? I am very clear that I want to put my head down and I want to do the best job that I can in that job. Right? I really feel that I want people to say that, this was the job description, and this person took that job description and amplified it and made it something different, right? The rest, quite honestly, you know, I strongly feel, generally speaking, talent finds its way is something I feel, right? And I therefore feel that I've been fortunate. I've had good managers, and my efforts have generally been rewarded, and I have progressed in a certain way. I do feel, and I will say this, a lot of, I was doing a convocation ceremony at XLRI, and in my remarks, I told everybody that, see, you got to have patience in building careers, right? A year here and there, a couple of years here and there doesn't make a difference when you're talking in decades of careers, right? A couple of years here and there feels bad in the moment when somebody from your batch or a friend of yours goes ahead. You don't. You feel you are capable and you should have gone ahead, etc. Of course, it feels bad, right? But you have to be able to somehow step back and see it in the context of the broader picture and say a couple of years here and there won't make a that much of a difference. happens, right? And that's what I feel that, to your specific question, that sometimes you're talking about having a super flow in your career and, not knowing the reason. I mean, for me, at least, like I said, whatever has happened in my career, I've always just focused on doing what I can do. That's the only variable I can control, and then hope that somebody is able to recognize that and move you forward. But I'm talking about the reverse, which can be sometimes difficult to manage, where you're not doing as well as you think you should be doing, right? And then I would say, give it some time, right? And at some point, if you feel that the organizational culture and the organizational value set and the organizational path forward for you is not marrying with what your personal aspirations are, then there are no options, of course, unfortunately, but then to look out.
The- I'm latching on to the last part, Samir, that you shared, and I was forced to remind myself of a situation in my career, and Ramesh, maybe that this helps. That there was a maybe around a 3 year career part in my or a period in my career where I thought I was doing fantastically well in that flow situation, and I was smashing everything. But whatever was happening to my career in terms of reviews and feedback and everything wasn't telling me all that. And it took me a while to realize that, look, I may be thinking I'm God's gift to mankind, but nobody else seems to think that way. And it was one of the most humbling lessons in my career, reasonably long career now, that if your flow and work and goodness and everything is not giving the company or organization the outcomes that it desires, then there is a dissonance, there is a misalignment. You may be doing very well, but it is not helping the organization or the team. And that is what happened to me. And I, of course, you opted for strategize or move on. I did strategize. I changed my ways a little bit. I had conversations. I figured out how we can align a little better, and things got better. Eventually, I did move on, but not before repairing the situation. So this, yes, it happened. It's a very deep and profound question. Thank you. Sameer, I'll take one question from a person, Abhishek Anand. Abhishek, I'm taking this question because you have reminded multiple times. So basically, Abhishek's question is about he wants a. This is not so much a leadership insight question, Abhishek, but since you seem to be in some stress, I'm taking this question. I will probably not even request Sameer unless he has a compelling response. But if your family situation is such that you have to be in a 9 to 5 job, maybe for the security or the paycheck at the end of the month, your reasons, I don't want to speculate on that. But you want to start on your own, what is really the choice? So you are just looking for an answer for somebody else for your situation, which you should never do because this is your life. You should be responsible. I'm sorry I'm using these kind of words, but it is completely your situation. You are the master of the situation. If your family situation is such that you have to have a secure job for a paycheck at the end of the month, debate over, in my view. So you may have dreams of starting on your own, going on Shark Tank and other things, but those dreams will have to wait, in my view. Sameer, anything you understood the question and the
No,
response?
and Abhishek, yeah, I mean, I think all I would say is this, that sometimes, in life we have to, there are certain things that are, kind of thrust upon us that we have to do. I don't know what your personal situation is, but, if that's what the requirement is, that there needs to be a certain, corporate style role, getting a certain salary at the end of the month, into your life while your own aspirations are something else, then regrettably, then, that's what you have to do, right? Because we all have to do what we have to do without sounding cliched about it, right? And then hopefully at some point situations change, and you can do what your heart really wants to do. Because as I said in the beginning, that we should try and seek out what it is that we want to do. The caveat to that also is that many times we can't, right? Many times we just end up doing things that we are not thoroughly our passion, right? Somebody may just say, I want to, I don't know, learn a musical instrument and become a musician, but if that beyond a point in time doesn't pay you well enough, right? And as I said, one thing in life is passion is there, right? But on the assumption that we have families, we have children, we have mortgages, we have education, we have careers, we have marriages, we have so many things, right, to get taken care of, right? That inflow that comes is important, right? And therefore, there's no point knocking that. It's not a good situation to be in when you're in a role that you just go in the morning and you're not looking forward to it. You're clocking in those hours, you come back, etc. But then you also have to realize, every time I go on a vacation, every time, right, I always sit and think that I'm so thankful to my employer that they have enabled this, right? Because I am getting paid a certain amount of money is
Hmm.
because I can
Yeah,
do a
yeah,
certain amount of things with that, right? And whether that's my children's education or anything. So again, Abhishek, I don't know what your personal situation is, but I can assure you, you are in the company of many, many, many other people, right, who are not necessarily doing what they love to do or what they aspire to do, but are having to do because of certain reasons.
yeah. But thanks, Abhishek, for summarizing your question, and I hope you got some insights into your situation. Obviously, like Samir said, we don't exactly know your situation, and it will not be very wise for us to hazard any guess or give advice where we can't. But all the best to you. Moving on, one question I often asked people, you know, who had a long career, Samir, um, that standing where you are today, what is the advice you will give to Sameer Chadha of about 20 years or 25 years ago? And I'm not saying start of your career. I'm saying you have started your career 5, 10 years into it, a little deeper into your career. So the startup hiccups have been smoothened. Now start being where you are in a leadership position for some years now in 2 companies, 3 companies. What will you tell a 25, 30-year-old Sameer Chadha today?
So I think a couple of things I'd say. One is that I would say that generally speaking, generally speaking, things are not as bad as they seem, when you're trying to grapple with an issue, right? So very often when you're dealt with a certain issue to work through, right, you may feel it's like, oh my gosh, this is like a big thing to work through. But my experience is that if you work through it, break it down into small bits and solution it, right, oftentimes things are not as bad as they initially appear when you have to deal with them. That's one thing I would tell my younger self. The other thing is slightly on the more philosophical side, right? That I think a lot of us are very privileged to be in the positions we are, right? And I do think that I would have told my 25-year-old self to be more aware of my privilege, to be more aware of my surroundings, to be kinder to people, to be nicer to people, right? And I think it takes nothing to do that, right? It's one thing I always feel, whenever we celebrate International Women's Day, right? And it's generally a day which is marked in a lot of organizations, and I see a domestic help who's a lady, or I see a woman security guard in my building, I always wonder that what difference is this really making into their lives on a day-to-day basis, right? And what does it take for you to when the guard in your office or the guard in your building says good afternoon or good morning to you, right, to look at them and acknowledge it, right, without just not even either not acknowledging or not even looking at them and just mechanically saying hello, right? So I would say that we have so much to be grateful for, and everybody gets dealt situations in their lives, but it takes nothing to be kind to people, it takes nothing to be nice to people, right? It takes nothing to lend a helping hand, right? When people ask for help for jobs, for example, right, none of us can actually give people jobs, whichever positions we may be in, right? All you can do is you can open the door, right? You can open a door, somebody can have an interview, if they're good, they'll go ahead, right? But I would just feel that we've been put in positions, a lot of us have been put in positions where you can help people, where you can be nice, and you should do that. I have a 26-year-old son, and I have a 21-year-old son, and I often try and tell them this, that be more mindful of the fact that you are in a position of privilege, right? Be nice to people, be kind to people, don't have any sense of entitlement, right? And something you said in the beginning, Anshuman, which triggered and has always been a core fundamental belief of my life, right, that humility in life is very important, right? I may be the CEO of KPMG Global Services today, but fact of the matter is, you're a senior person in DXC. You had a very great career behind you. But at the end of the day, careers are ephemeral, right? You have a job today, you don't have a job tomorrow, right? So people
Yeah,
have to basically respect you for the person you are, not for the position you're holding. At
position.
least that has been a fundamental credo of mine. That dream big, think big, aim for the stars, keep your feet on the ground, right? At the end of the day, we are all human beings, right? And if it's especially in the corporate world, the jobs are here today, gone tomorrow. I've always felt that people should want to engage with you even when you're not sitting in the chair that you're sitting in today.
And that's a fantastic thought, Samir, because at the end of the day, that is what we take back. One day we will not be employed in corporate, we might be doing something. One day we might not be even doing anything at all. And even at that stage, if people come to you for either just saying hi, how are you, and have a good conversation. That is the life's earning that we all have. Everybody will make something or the other. We will have a house, we'll have some luxury, we'll have a comfortable life. Many of us have, like I said, had the privilege of having a continued long career. Over a continued long career, you will always acquire some luxuries in life, some more, some less. But this is something that can be only acquired over a period of time. Okay. Mm, okay. Uh, just checking some more questions, but now that you've taken this question, one com we are almost at 45 minutes, so we will start wrapping up the show, Sameer. The core question, of course, during the show we have dissected. You have helped us dissect, through your insights as to what can people do in terms of, and how can people think about their careers, or how can they be intentional in general. And we got some wonderful questions also which were able to help us in that direction. The one question which we can maybe wrap up as is that what can they do today in terms of building skill sets, or like you said, life skills or essential skills as many people call it. What can they do today in mid career so that their next 10, 15, 20 years are better? So the most common ones, of course, is upskill and all, but I just thought from a leadership point of view, what would be your advice to youngsters who are in mid career today to build skill sets that can be useful for the next 20 years?
I, I think for that, so let's say something is, so I'll take Gen AI as an example of something that is talked about a lot
Mhm.
nowadays, or let's say ESG is talked about, right? If you want to make a career in that, right, you have to invest in yourself. You have to do certifications. You have to do relevant training. So not enough to put up your hand in your existing organization. If you put up your hand and say, I want a role in Gen AI, I want a role in data analytics, I want a role in cloud computing, I want a role in ESG, right? You always have to understand why would the person on the other end actually hire you in the first place, right? You have to be able to bring something to the table, right? That bringing can only come through investing in yourself, doing training. So many organizations nowadays have access to such fantastic L&D content to upskill yourself. And you said the answer is upskilling, but it ends up that I'm telling you that I'm a voracious reader, voracious, right? I read all the
Mhm.
time now. May not be books, but I'm reading articles. I'm educating myself on ESG. I'm educating myself on Gen AI, just so that I remain relevant, right? So to remain relevant, you have to invest in yourself, and I may need to know it at a certain level. Somebody who is, at a mid-career may need to know it at a deep practitioner level. So you have to invest in yourself, whichever way you want to go, right? Nobody's going to, pick you just because of the fact that you seem very enthusiastic about wanting to do a certain thing, right? You have to bring some skills to the table, and those skills are what basically get, hired by people. So that's what I would say. That one thing, and it's not linked to what Anshuman is saying, but I will say as a closing comment. Coincidentally,
Sure.
this is a mid-career, as you said, individuals, right? That coincidentally over the last whatever, maybe 3 or 4 months, I've had people who I know who have changed jobs, and they've
Mhm.
actually ended up feeling a lot of butterflies in their stomach and not comfortable in the new environment. I will tell you this, that there is no role change, job change, anything that you can do which would not normally make you feel a little unsure when you get into that role. It's the nature of the thing. When I came into KPMG, I felt a little unsure till I actually, learned everything. When I became the CEO in Barclays, I was the chief operating officer, and I still had to learn and figure out that thing. Everybody feels nervous. Everybody gets butterflies in their stomach when they change roles, change jobs, irrespective of seniority, right? And I just think the only way to get over that is to put your head down, learn what you're into, and move ahead. And I can assure most people, right, that 1 year down the road, when you look back to day one, you'll say, wow, I wonder why I was actually so nervous at that point in time, right? Because as long as week one is better than day one, week four is better than week one, month three is better than month one, that's the progression. You can't move into a new role or a new job within the same company or another company, right? And there are some people who I know who have changed countries as well. That's an added level of complexity when you're dealing with stuff. So it's totally natural to feel unsure. And something Anshuman said, which kind of stuck with me, is that when people interview you and you're feeling a little nervous about something, you have to remind yourself, X number of people interviewed me. They thought I was right for the job. That's why I got the offer anyways in the first place, right? And therefore, you have to have the belief in yourself that you can actually crack whatever it is that you're getting into, right? Because why would somebody hire you if they didn't think you had the capability to actually do what you're doing, right? So this is something you'll repeatedly come in your career. I have gone through it, let's say 4 or 5, 6 times, right? And like I said, irrespective of seniority, you have a feeling of turbulence for a bit. I guess when you're senior, you've probably seen more, you have more experiences, you can deal with it better than when you can with other things. But it is not something that you should feel, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Nothing. People who say that they don't feel nervous when they change jobs or this thing, either they're superstars, or actually they don't want to actually acknowledge the fact that they are feeling
Yeah, I'm
that. Yeah.
glad you said this because sometimes I do feel that the feeling of nervousness is actually an indicator that we can get better. And if we overcome that nervousness and do better, I've always, I mean, when I get invited to speak at a lot of conferences, I'm sure you do as well. Each time I walk up, I am
Yeah.
shitting bricks. So,
Yeah.
and people do see me as a very confident speaker, and I make, I'm witty and all that. I get all that, but the 1 minute from my seat to the podium, I am nervous as hell, and I built a
100%.
routine over that I take my own time. I walk slowly. I remove my glasses. I take a water bottle just to calm myself down, and that helps me.
It's a it's a
Um,
it's a great analogy, really. And Ramesh ji has put this thing that doesn't mean feeling nervous is good because you want to work harder to stay and survive and
ah,
thrive. Spot on. This is
yes,
spot on. I
absolutely.
feel nervous energy is actually a very powerful thing because it helps you prepare. It helps you put your head down. It helps you actually want to get under the skin of something. The idea is not to get paralyzed by it, right? Because the extreme
Right.
of it is that you get paralyzed by the nervous energy and you can't progress, right? But nervousness is great because, like Anshuman is saying, even I do a lot of public speaking. You're always a little jittery before you get up and get into your flow, right? Because it's just the nature of what it is, right? But that nervousness is important because even for coming for this session, right? I was getting my thoughts together saying, okay, this is what I have to say. These are some of the examples I'll give. You have to be prepped for it, right? And if you are not feeling that small sense of anxiety, right, you'll never actually be invested in trying to, get over it. But don't take it to the extreme of where it paralyzes your ability to act.
Excellent. We are almost at the end of the conversation, but I thought something that we just discussed in the last 5 minutes, Samir, with your permission, I'll summarize. I often use a framework called SHINE in my mid-career conversations, and it's an acronym I use, and it might be useful to the audience. So SHINE is for socially adept people. So wherever you are, whichever job people are in, there will be a requirement for social interaction. So if you are not socially fluid, then there is a little difficulty. H is for hard work. Nobody hates a person who works hard. So if you are the hardest working person in the room, you will find some friends here and there. And you many times for 99% of the people, that's the only option left. You have to be able to work hard, and H, so SHI call about the intellect of problem solving. So nobody again hates a problem solver. If you are able to solve problems, people will love you. N is for numbers, meet your numbers. E is for emotionally stable. So there will be setbacks.
Good one.
Samir mentioned many such situations where I share this quite often, and over the years, and it's now become
Very
a
cool.
stable. Wherever I am invited, I am thinking this is my show, but I still will share. So use that. Anybody who's listening to this, either the live one or the recorded one, if you in mid-career think of all these 5 parameters, it will always be useful. Not everybody is good at all 5, but your endeavor should be to keep moving on. These are like 5 subjects in your graduation. You have to pass in all 5. You can't fail in one, and otherwise you'll stay behind. You may not be topper in all 5, but you have to pass in all 5. Okay, with that, Sameer, any closing comments? Because there are some questions, but I am mindful of the time, so I will try and wrap up. But any closing comments from you about any summary for the show or the questions or anything at all that you wanted to say before we close?
No, I think that acronym is very cool. So I'll end with something which a cool acronym which I used to always not. It's not mine. Jack Welch used to talk about it, and he used to say that your leadership should be based on 4 E's and a P, right? Which is
Uh,
that you should have the edge to do difficult things and take difficult decisions. You should have a lot of personal energy. You should be able to energize people. You should be able to execute. So those are the 4 P's, and you should have passion. So I've always felt that that was a pretty nice way of
That
framing leadership as well. And I would just say this in closing, that this is a show about mid careers and managing better and building yourself brick by brick. Is that nobody is as invested in you as you are yourself. Be very clear about that. It is not your supervisor or your manager's job to make sure that you succeed in life. It is, of course, their job, right? It is my job to make sure that my team succeeds. That is my I got a lot of satisfaction when my team does well, whether they're in the current organization or a previous organization. Somebody moves up, I feel a sense of pride in them. Of course, it is the job of every manager to make their team flourish, but fundamentally the person who's the most invested in you is you yourself, right? So you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep investing in yourself. You have to be improving your chances of getting selected for the roles that open up, right? And that can come through your attitude, your abilities, how you're always a can-do person, how you're always solution oriented, and things like that. So build that persona about you, because ultimately your career is in your hands, right? And then you hope for the right managers who can pave the path and facilitate it for you.
fantastic. Thank you, Sameer. Not only for this response, but also for the last almost an hour, just under an hour. So the audience has clearly loved it. I'm still getting a lot of messages. So guys, keep that coming on. And those of you who are messaging me directly, please respond on the LinkedIn page, so that the show can also get a little popular. The reason I do this also is so that more and more people can benefit from this, and I will keep bringing more such guests to all of you.
I
I usually try and
I do
sure.
feel. I'm sorry. I apologize for coming in, but I do feel like that cricketer who's got out before hitting the century and came in on the episode number 99. But so I will say that I'll eagerly await your 100th episode. Yeah.
I will call you again to compensate for you being the 99th. That if you remember, we had actually started talking in November, December for scheduling this. So
That's
there
right.
was a very good chance
That's
that you might have been the 100th one.
that's
But
that's
such
right.
is life. So with that, I may reveal who's the 100th one. Is on 2 weeks from now, 20th of April. Ankur Wariku will be my next guest, and
Awesome,
Ankur
man.
doesn't need
Awesome. Awesome.
any more introduction. So
Yeah.
that was always once it started gelling together. I said, looks like stars are aligning. So the last few
Superb.
guests have been
Superb.
awesome. So thanks to people like you who give their generous time. With that, I will close the show. And everybody who joined the show live, of course, thank you. And those who will watch this later, or listen to an audio version, thank you very much for tuning in. Bye bye, and see you on 20th April, 11 a.m. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thanks.